Consciousness is finding a middle lane where you have some strategy, you have grace, you have flow, you have the ability really to adapt. It's about adaptability with understanding and being passionately unattached. Understanding that, if you come from a place of love, you can't go wrong in that.
All right, welcome back. We are here with the Better Human podcast, once upon a time called the Wits podcast, and we are here with the one and only, the extraordinary Jim Gardiner, who is a high-performance coach working on things like conscious leadership, comes from a pro-athlete background. And we're going to talk to him today about what it's like to be successful in today's world, what are some best practices for things like mindset, for managing ego, for focusing on the future in an optimistic way, how do we operate with a little more presence, and more importantly, what are the things that we can do next year to make it a way better year than we did this year. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Greg. Always amazing to be here.
Tell us a little bit about your story. I know you were used to row and you come from a competitive sports background. You're a coach, but walk us through sort of where you started and how you got here.
Sure. Thanks for having me, by the way, Greg. Well, it really started when I went to university and I decided to join the rowing team. I delved into a sport steep in tradition and culture and team dynamics. And so there was an instant love affair that catapulted a lot of what I do now from that event and leading people, understanding that I have a natural leadership ability, if you will, to help people that I work with over the years. That confidence, that courage, that self-assurance catapulted me to New York, to New York City and LA, where I lived for 14 years, diving into not only entertainment industry, but also into coaching and working in businesses. So I started as a bartender, and then I rose to management, and then I rose to GM, and then I started to be kind of a hired gun to help companies set up bi-coastal, more so in the hospitality industries. But that kind of spearheaded in me to moving up to the Pacific Northwest, in a sense, doing the same thing. So where I am now is a culmination of those kind of performance-driven journeys, either high-performance sport and athletics, and also leadership, and with my own personal, what I call my jungle event, Greg, which is kind of a life-changing event that I've gone through to really get back in touch with who I am as a person.
And what was that event? Are you comfortable sharing what that event was?
Sure, absolutely. I knew instinctively that I wasn't connected to my truth, what my authentic truth is as a human being. I had to walk away from an amazing family and disrupt, two lovely girls and a wife, a woman who was an amazing soul. It just wasn't calling to me. It was constricting me from really stepping into who I was designed to be. Mm-hmm. And so diving into the jungle of a few years of deep work, a lot of shit sandwiches to really uncover my truth mm-hmm. and begin to step out back into the world with zero expectations, only pulling things back into my world that really served and honored who I was and who I am becoming. And with that, Greg, comes this consciousness that I steer with now. I lead with my heart. I lead with love in everything I do, from dealing with high-level business CEO execs to personal development, to my kids, to my colleagues. It's all from a conscious perspective.
What were some of the things that you went through during that time that helped you uncover? Were there certain exercises? Were there certain books that you read? What were some of the tools that you used?
First and foremost, I truly feel that we need to sit in our own poo-poo for a while. We truly need to sit and just assess. And so a lot of that, I didn't reach out for help right away because I was trying to understand it all. Mm-hmm. And it took me to some dark places and a lot of deep personal moments of vulnerability, of shedding, and inevitably though, I had two people in my life that were kind of a foundation for me, two colleagues that were there. To be honest with you, I relied on the ability that I fostered way back when I took up the sport of rowing as an asthmatic kind of weak kid. I just believed that I could do it. And I just started to look at YouTube videos, to watch inspirational videos, do all the things that I knew instinctively make up the tapestry of who I am, whether it was sports, whether it was movies, whether it was anything, music that I could get my hands on to push me one step forward on that positive momentum path, because it's always about the very next step.
Not to oversimplify it, but you did the work. You learned, you read, you studied, you went through the reflective exercises, you went through the deep sitting in shit exercise, which requires us to take a hard look. And in some cases, part of vulnerability requires you to go through that. And a lot of people will throw the word vulnerability out and don't actually understand what it might take to go there sometimes. So that's interesting. So this all led you up to doing what you're doing now. And I got to tell you, I've always said this, the greatest people you can hire are people that come from serving backgrounds, bartenders, servers in restaurants, because you just learn how to navigate the world of people and high stressed environments and, quality and all that stuff. So how much do you think your bartending experience contributed to your ability to be a great coach today?
Actually, quite a lot, because as a bartender, you're in a position to listen, and most people don't listen in this day and age. So the secret, besides making good cocktails, at the end of the day, it's making people feel heard and understood. That's your job as a bartender. And so
the ultimate therapist.
Yeah. And it's not always easy, because that, in those settings, there's usually some heaviness to a lot of the therapeutic bartending work that we do. Not much unlike what we do with some of our one-on-one clients. Everyone has these kind of heavier issues that we need to address. So definitely a lot. And because in New York, as you can imagine, in these kind of high-profile establishments, there's a lot of people, and so you get a cross-section of personalities. And whether it was me with my team or me with customers, you understand instinctively how to reach people differently based on energetics, based on what he or she, what type of cloth they're cut from, so to speak.
Right.
And that serves me with my clients, because no two clients are the same.
That's true. Very true. Very, very, very true. Good journey of self-discovery. I think, what I like about your story is there's a result to this exercise of self-discovery. I mean, you're the proof that, hey, you go through this type of work and this type of exercise, there's an outcome to all of this stuff, which is awesome. So I want to segue into sort of the next piece, where I wanted to sort of, get more understanding around what conscious leadership is, because we hear the word consciousness and we hear, think before you speak, or we talk about transparent leadership and authentic leadership. And there's a lot of words being wrapped around the word leadership. And I think next year, moving into 2021, I mean, if this year was shit, next year is going to require way more from us as leaders. And, I think it's important that we do operate with consciousness. And I love the concept of conscious leadership. So talk to us a little bit about what is conscious leadership, and then let's get into, how do we use conscious leadership?
I look at conscious leadership as a middle lane. I look at it as a middle lane between one side of old world sweat equity, work until you drop. It's all about saving for retirement, and success is built on the end result. And then on the other side of that spectrum is the woo-woo, if you will, oh, everything will work out, universe is da 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 da. And consciousness is finding a middle lane where you have some strategy, you have grace, you have flow, you have the ability really to adapt. It's about adaptability with understanding and being passionately unattached, understanding that, if you come from a place of love, you can't go wrong in that. And sure, we need some rigidity. And the way I look at it, Greg, is because I have two young girls. And so when I take them bowling, right, and bowling alleys, I got the bumpers, right? You put the bumpers up for the kids. And so that's a middle lane that I've established for myself and for my clients, is to figure out what that lane is. So no matter where you go, you're still on that right path. You're never going to swing too far one direction or the other.
The guardrails. Love it. Love the guardrails. I, as a bowler, I use it as an adult. No. So, back to this whole concept of conscious leadership. Where else do people apply this stuff? I mean, yeah. Well, actually, let's go back to you said something called. You used the term passionately detached.
Passionately unattached.
Passionately unattached, even better
Yeah.
than detached, right? Talk to me a little more about what that means. What does that look like? How do I do that?
As human beings, we're focused on the end result, and a lot of times, with that end result comes an emotional attachment, i.e., this client doesn't want to sign with me. Oh fuck!
Mm-hmm.
Like, what did I do wrong? I have so much to offer, and we take things personally as human beings. A lot of people do, and so this is a way to remove yourself from that, knowing with grace, with that consciousness that you have the ability to offer somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And you can be there for support and service and contribution. At the end of the day, no matter what, that doesn't change who you are. It's the journey of your ability to be there, and not get tied up in that tangible end result. And that's about being present, I think, too, right?
It's a lot of conversation around presence, right? And it's hard for us to be present. People don't listen well, right? You said people take things personally, so they tend to, build up these stories as we're talking to them. So, I mean, if people do this, and we do this as leaders as well. So, what are some things that I can do next year as a conscious leader that will contribute to people's success in the workplace, success in life? It's not just about workplace. It's about helping these human beings navigate the world. So what might be some things I should sort of practice or do next year?
This is the perfect time of the year. We need to reflect. And, it's always about, don't waste your time looking back. You're not going that way yet. A glance or two in the rearview mirror provides a kind of an assessment of things that either worked, things that didn't work. And a big one for me about stepping into conscious leadership is, where were there elements of misalignment? That's a huge thing. And so to step into 2021 as a conscious leader, and let's be clear, Greg, leadership it's what we do in life as human beings. We're leaders. Whether we're husbands, wives, parents, business owners, we're all in the business of leadership. So
sometimes influential leadership, where we don't have direct authority, but we need to influence and impact and, move.
Yeah. And I like it back to my journey in uncovering my truth. Everyone needs to be clear on what their truth is, because misalignment will always show itself. Mm-hmm. And so this is a perfect time of the year for everyone to get clear on who they are and spend time with themselves. Journal. We talk about journaling a lot, you and I, in our past conversation as well. Mm-hmm. Getting clear on what they want, and if it aligns with the truth, then the how will manifest itself. The how will show up. We'll take the first step, and then the second step will happen, and so forth. Conscious leadership. What contribution do we want to make in 2021? Huge.
Yeah, that's a big question.
Doesn't have to be changing the world.
Right.
I mean, what is my active contribution? Because that is always a common denominator in conscious leadership for 100%.
What's crossed your desk? What are some of the things that you've heard that, people are going to activate and be focused on next year?
Well, I think perception is huge, because what we've learned in 2020 is, for all intents and purposes, if you choose to look at it through this lens, it was a shit year. If you choose to look at it through that lens. However, I personally had an amazing year. Mm-hmm. And I choose to perceive it a certain way. And so moving into this next year, and with the reality of nothing's really going to change. The climate of unsurety is probably greater than ever. We don't really know what's going to happen one day to the next. So if we can arm ourselves with the ability to perceive something and change our internal dialogue, our internal story around it, so that the glass is freaking half full.
Mm-hmm. Right.
We're ahead of the game.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes easier said than done. I mean, it was a really shitty year, but I killed it this year. Yeah. Now we're down in revenue, and we're overworked, and we're super tired. But you know what? We represented our brand. We lived the way we wanted to live. We showed up in the world. to what our intention was, and in a lot of cases stepped up in a place of service, which was very difficult to do when the pressure is on, right? And I share this story with you, or I respond to what you just said, which is, it is a choice in how we operate with our perceptions. It is a choice on the lens we look at the world through. It's a choice on where we let our emotions overpower us and not. And yes, it is hard work sometimes. It is very difficult to challenge some perceptions. It's very difficult to change that story in our head, because we've got this wonderful ability to use our imagination and build up these movies inside our head. They're super descriptive, super vivid, right? And it's appealing again to all the primal things, our sensories, right? Not our language. So managing perceptions is, I think, also, I agree with you, a really important piece for next year. And I think one of the key things that can help us be more conscious when we're operating as leaders. And as you said, not just leaders, as parents, as managers, as friends, as peers, as just people that operate in the community. Very cool. All right. So before we move on next, anything else that people can do next year to be more conscious or more successful?
Yeah, the last thing is I feel this past year, if you will, has really put a magnifying glass on the fact that many people live in a fear-based society, a fear culture. And so we all collectively need to move forward to kind of change that lens and not let the fear of the unknown dictate how we're going to live our lives. If anything, how we truly want to live 2021 could arguably be one of the most important years ever.
Mm-hmm.
It's a transition year. How we move forward into 2021 is going to dictate the next phase of the human condition, in my opinion.
I totally agree. I was talking about this yesterday. It is scary to see how people operate in such fear now. Parents going over, not wanting to see their children, or grandparents not wanting to go over because of the fear of whatnot. And this is not to negate being safe, being a good community member. You know, if we need to wear a mask, wearing a mask, because it's more for others than yourself. But what's really been damaging this year isn't so much the economy, but the human psyche, as you said, from a place of fear. And it's really sad to watch. There's this tension with people. Where do I sit? How close do I get? But again, if we're safe and if you're doing what you should be doing, then there's nothing to fear, right? But isn't that just what drives all of us? Isn't that what drives us as human beings, is our fear?
This is a rabbit hole, but I agree with you. I had this conversation with a colleague just the other day about a book writing that she's doing. I think fear was kind of the first major catalyst of the human race, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
Everything stems from the fear of unknown, when and
Mm-hmm.
whatever we create in terms of stories, religion, rules, well, you name it.
All right, let's move into the next part, and this is advice for the young adults ready to take on the world, that's managed their fear, that's willing to address their perceptions. What do you think people can do to be successful, not just next year, but in life? I mean, if you were to mentor someone, what would be sort of the top things you would say, these are things that you need in order to have a good life, to be successful, to be healthy, to be emotionally balanced, to manage perceptions? Right? But let's say someone wanted to be a coach, someone wanted to get into our industry.
Sure.
What advice would you give them?
Well, I'll draw back on my two main pathways to get to where I am. Number one, it's mindset. Everyone is an athlete. You are an athlete in any career that you choose to do. So what is your training plan? What does your strategy look like for mindset, for inner game work, for building your business, for building your future?
Mm-hmm.
A big one for me, Greg, is a non-negotiable, is nutrition. How are you fueling your body and mind and energy to perform for your podium moments, getting back to being an athlete? The ego needs to take a back seat. How are you steering the ship, trusting that the wind is filling your sails, is your truth, taking you to where you need to go in alignment, setting the compass point, doing so with a selflessness component, as opposed to a selfish component in terms of end results and why you're on this earth and of being of contribution. Don't get caught up in the end result. It's about the journey and what we're doing.
Sometimes easier said than done. And, that's that saying that it comes with age. Sometimes, you're too old, but you understand the stuff now. Can you imagine if we understood this stuff at the age of 18, if we
Well,
practice this mindset?
yes, you're absolutely right, Greg. However, I would say that from when you and I were that young, which is probably going back a number of years,
A little while ago.
the pendulum has swung a little bit, though. That old school kind of sweat equity, it's kind of the dinosaur now. I think the 18-year-olds, the 23-year-olds, they're a little bit more aware of some of these key influential people out there that have this more of a balance, for a lack of a better word, more of a holistic balance, because people realize more than ever, quality of life, living life is more important than success
Right.
at the end of the day when you're on your deathbed, because what are you taking with you?
Right. So let me recap. Number one, mindset. Mindset is everything. In fact, you got a poster there that sits behind you, right? Because it all starts with our mindset, right? I mean, this is where we need to have a mind like an elephant in some cases. We need to be strong in mind, right? What contributes to strong in mind, as you said, a training plan. Making sure you are training, you are working yourself out, you're working your brain, you're working your emotions, you're working your communication, you're working your leadership, you're working your interpersonal skills, you're working your strategies. You've got a training plan for all that shit. Because as you said, as an athlete, that's what we do. We train and perform, train and perform, train and perform. And we do different exercises to improve the training and to improve that sort of, response and reactive time. Awesome. 3, nutrition, which I agree with as well. I think eating healthy is a really important thing. We are too intelligent now to be operating without proper nutrition. Eating healthy is easy. It's back to what we were talking about earlier, which is consciousness, conscious thought. And then the third or the fourth was ego. Getting rid of that ego and understanding that this is maybe in some cases about the journey, and more importantly about your ability to give and be of service and to support more than the end result. Man, that's great advice. I think that's not just advice for the 18-year-old, it's advice for all of us.
Yes, and I'm going to throw in real quick a fifth one.
Okay, cool.
Every high performance athlete, what do they need? Where do they adapt and grow the most is when they systematically put in recovery times. So
yes.
In the business of life, we have to take our foot off the gas periodically, smell the roses, decompress, assess, and recharge. I think it's a non-negotiable, and especially for the young people, we come out of the gate, right? We're burning, we're blazing. Well, that intensity is going to kick you in the ass at some point unless you pump the brakes, right?
You restore. Yeah, it's all in sports science, which is the importance of restoration. In fact, you'll know this: athletes don't train the day before, or in some cases the week before their big event, right? They restore. So good, and we need to do that as people. And I think COVID in 2020 has all given us a little bit of permission to take a little bit of extra time and to slow down and to rest before we get back into it next year.
Yeah.
Jim, you're amazing as usual. I really appreciate your time, your advice, your guidance. This was full. This was informative. I learned a few things, and I know the audience will as well. Really appreciate taking your time.
Awesome. My pleasure. Always. Anytime.
All right, my man. We're going to wrap up. And on that note, if you like today's show, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to share. Don't forget to spread the word. Don't forget to follow Mr. Jim Gardiner. We'll make sure that all that information is in there as well. And we will see you next time. Hey, I'm Greg Witz. Thanks so much for coming and checking out the video. If you like that video, you're going to love the next one. So I'd highly suggest that you click this video over here. And don't forget to subscribe and share.